15 seconds, attention precedes the emotional resonance, you're not going to get it. So this means, as they say in Hollywood, you got to open hot. Things are happening now. This is exciting. Things are happening. Turn on, get that brain going. And now once you do that, you've got to get me emotionally engaged by this. And the most effective way to do that, this is like, feedback from English 101, is to tell a story. A story structure introduces characters, has some kind of tension, has authentic emotions. That's exactly what our social brains like to see. That's how we learn effectively. So if I can tell a story with a narrative arc that increases tension, I sustain neurologic immersion over that message or experience and generate this higher level of immersion. The next is got to be relevant to me. So I have 2 kids, they're 22 and 25. If you show me a commercial for Huggies with a cute little baby with big eyes, I will watch it and then my brain will flush it out because I don't have babies at home. It's not relevant to me. And if Huggies are 20% off, not meaningful. So there's a term for this in neuroscience. It's called top-down processing. The top part of the brain, the cortex, will devote the areas that process emotion to put more metabolic energy into this experience if it's relevant to me. So if I have babies at home and I see a cute commercial with babies for Huggies and they're 20% off, extremely relevant to me. So this means there's not one perfect ad message experience for everybody. You have to target that audience. You've got to find for whom this is most relevant. And I'll give you some examples of that in a second. The next is you've got to find your super fans. I call this targeting. So besides identifying who this message is relevant for, all the Hollywood studios have fandom departments. They identify people who write fan fiction, who post about their movies or TV shows online, and they engage them. So fans in the marketing world will work for free to help you. You just have to ask them. Your product or your customer experience or your restaurant or your movie is so important to them that they want to help you spread the word. An example is this movie, Fault in Our Stars. A lot of you guys saw it. Based on a teen novel. They were so smart on the marketing. This was $12 million to produce, no big name stars, made $300 million because they marketed the hell out of it. Right? So before it came out, they had a contest for all the states in the US, and whoever posted the most about the movie coming out, they flew the stars there and had a big event where you could ask them questions. They found that mostly teenage girls, that's the target market for this, would see the movie in groups 3, 4, 5 times. And of course, some of the boys that wanted to be with those girls would go with them. So after they saw the movie 3 or 4 times, they said, oh, by the way, we're going to have a special kind of screening now. Now that you've memorized the movie, if you pay instead of $15 for the movie, $25, after the movie, we will video conference in the stars to your movie theater and you can ask them questions. So now you've seen the movie 5 times. Would you pay an extra $10 to see it again and ask your favorite stars that you fell in love with on the show? Oh, yeah. So people saw this over and over and over because they activated those super fans. So ask them. This is leverage for marketing that is often ignored and shouldn't be. And the last is you've got to have call to action. That's a picture of the first time we went tandem skydiving and took my blood before and after to find out what the hell happens when you jump out of an airplane at 12,000 feet. And I was very focused. My skydive instructor said there's 3 things you need to do to get out of the airplane safely. Okay. And by the way, this was on film, and I had a graduate student doing a cognitive test on me at 12,000 feet. While people are disappearing out of the back of an airplane, I couldn't even add 2-digit numbers because I had 3 things I had to do to get out of the plane safely. I don't know what an unsafe exit from that airplane is, but I do not want to find out. Right? I'm focused on that task. So what we found is that when we have marketing that has a call to action at the immersion peak, that highest emotional tension point, it's much more likely to be successful than at low tension points. So often in, for example, TV advertising or advertising online, we'll see this nice story arc, and at the end, call to action when the tension's low. Well, now you've actually dissipated some of that energy. So if you think about neurologic immersion as energy or passion, my energy's high, you've captured me, ask me now, right? So don't let that go. It's very important to have that call to action when the tension is high. So there's a formula: staging, immersion, relevance, target, and action. Turns out to create an extraordinary experience, whether it's in-store shopping, going to a restaurant, creating marketing, employee experience. So let me give you a couple of examples and show you a couple of publications, and then get the heck off the stage. Okay, so I want to give you some examples to show you what these data look like. I should say that this is not client data, right? We have clients using the Immersion platform all the time. These are demos that I created just for you wonderful humans. So the first is from Bass Pro Shops. This is going to hot link if everything works perfectly. Oh my word, now what's showing on the screen? Hold on, humans. Hold on. Technical breakdown. Okay. Oh my word, it's working. Okay, so first question we want to ask is this ad good or bad? This is 2013 Super Bowl ad. Super Bowls are fun, ads are fun because they spend so much money on them and a lot of them fail. So they're a great test case. So the platform automatically identifies those regions in which the brain is putting a lot of energy, high immersion into processing that experience. Those are in green. The areas in gray are around the middle. And if there are areas in red, your brain's just kind of tuned out. You're not interested. So this is pretty good, mostly green and red. We have to worry about, this is the data average across a bunch of people that watched it. I forgot how many. I'm going to play it for you in a second with audio, my AV friends up there. And we can just look at, second by second, how valuable this is to the brain. So higher is better. It's normalized to run 0 to 100, so it's easy to understand.
The mist on the lake in the morning. The smell of the campfire at night. The feel of 8-pound test running through your fingers. And that trip to the store just to get ready for it all. The treasured traditions of an entire way of life. And that makes those experiences priceless. Johnny Morris, Bass Pro Shops, and Cabela's, world's foremost outfitters. Voted America's best outdoor retailer. Save even more and support conservation when you join the club.
Okay, smart students.
The mist on the lake in the morning.
It's going to run again. Smart students, how many branding moments did you see? How many times did you see the logo for Bass Pro Shops? Come on, it's Tennessee. You guys love Bass Pro Shops here. Come on, you know, you're outdoorsy. So I saw 3. I saw one, which was the front of the store on a fairly peak immersion moment around here. I saw one over here with a logo, and then at the very end was really the branding moment. But look at this schmutz in the last 10 seconds. A guy getting out of a tent, no emotion, no faces have emotion. So if I want to increase immersion, I can show faces, I can show tension. A dude getting out of his tent from the back, don't care. Now, this is a Super Bowl commercial. This was $6.5 million for 30 seconds just to air it, 2 or 3 times that to produce it, right? The first 20 seconds, killer, fabulous. Last 10, these are smart people, but they blew it in the last 10 seconds. And that major branding moment, join our club, blah, 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 not so useful. I mean, it wasn't in the red zone, it was in the gray zone, but not as good as it could have been. And so that's the failure of not measuring. Okay, let's do another one, just for funsies. Okay, click, click, click. This is all live, you guys. I'm the whole reason for the delay is I wanted to do live stuff with you. Okay, let's make this video a little bigger. Now you can see, again, second by second, starts out in the gray zone, not fabs, and then gets better. The question is why? What's going on? What's the structure of this advertisement?
I'm home! Woo! Lead me tonight under the light, just you and me. Well, hello. Ladder. Life insurance so good, they're gonna want you dead. I'm okay, guys.
But seriously, intentionally killing a policyholder will void all life insurance benefits.
Right, so ex post, it's easy to see why that's such a good commercial, right? Starts out, we're okay. It's a setup that we're familiar with. And then we have this change. The brain loves the new thing. Like, holy crap, he's in bed with a crocodile, right? And so that's really a whole different ball game when you talk about how to make a communication, a communication that allows people to have this emotional connection to go, oh yeah, insurance, they want to kill your spouse because it's so good. Maybe I should look online and see if this thing's any good or not, right? So again, it's that sort of train wreck like the Diet Coke commercial, where this is sufficiently valuable to the brain. It's unusual, it's different, but it captures us, and emotions not only tag the experience as valuable, highly emotional experiences are saved in memory in a very particular way that make them more easily accessible. And so now when I see that logo, when I see that for this ladder insurance, I'm remembering, I'm re-experiencing that emotional response from seeing the ad, so it carries over. And that's what we really want from a marketing perspective. Okay, let's wrap this up with a couple of scientific publications, since this is a scientific conference. So we've been using this technology to influence things that are difficult to influence. Because, I'm a persuasion guy. So in particular, we've been looking at a number of factors that are harder to measure in the laboratory, but allow us to really understand what people are doing in real life, which is really my interest. And so since we had millions of dollars of taxpayer money, we looked at why people cheat or cooperate. But we want to do this in a realistic way. So these are working adults, 25 to 50 years old, like real humans, not mini humans, like a lot of you guys in this room. And we put $540 on the line. Meaningful money for almost everybody, certainly anybody who came to our experiment. And then, rather than do this sort of share the money task anonymously, we let them meet each other. So you and I are going to talk. We have this task in which you're going to make a decision, and then I can either cooperate or I can screw you over and defect and take all the money. And so what are you going to do? Well, when you talk to someone, if you're psychologically healthy, hey, we got all this money to share. Of course I'm going to share, right? So there was a famous British show that did the same thing called Golden Balls. And they would talk to each other, and then they would make decisions in private, and sometimes people got screwed over, and they took all the money, and the partner got zero, or sometimes they shared it. And you had to figure out which one to do. In this one, 99% of the people said they would share the money, but a third of them screwed over their partners. And what happened to those who screwed over their partners? Well, neurologically, they had, while they were talking to them, a stress response that predicted with high accuracy they were going to cheat. And we assessed their emotional states after cheating. These people who cheated had a decrement in mood. They felt bad. Like, I promised this nice person I'd cooperate, and we both get, $270, and then, sorry, baby, I'm taking it all. They don't feel good about that. So these are healthy humans, right? Criminals, psychopaths, which we've studied in some detail, don't have that same neurologic factor. And so this gives us insight into how real interactions, real transactions occur, which is not $5 in a lab with college students whose parents make $1 million a year. This is real money with real people. Then we had a very interesting subscriber to the Immersion platform that asked us, a subscriber that hosts charity videos. So all these charities that want to get your money, they put videos up and you can watch them, and then if you like the video, you can click and say, yeah, I'll donate $5 or $10. And they said, hey, we are trying to figure out why people watch our videos. It's kind of a weird thing, like you're kind of bored and I don't know, you get directed by an ad or something, you're like, okay, well, I'll watch some videos about homeless people or kids with cancer or whatever. And they say, we just want to figure out like why some videos get donations and some don't. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting research study. We should look at that. What we found was that, again, real people donating real money. This is not, again, college students for $10. We found that the higher their neurologic immersion, the longer people watched a video. They got paid in this study. They got paid if they watched it for 1 second or the entire thing. They could choose. So people watched different videos at different lengths. The higher their neurologic immersion, the longer they watched the video, the longer they watched it, the more money and the more likely they were to donate to that charity. So again, the brain's doing this cost-benefit calculation, going, oh, this is interesting to me. I'm interested in kids with cancer because my child cousin had cancer, and I want to find out more about childhood cancer and the research at St. Jude's Children's Hospital or wherever, and so I'll keep watching it, right? So individuals are self-selecting based on that search algorithm what's relevant, what's meaningful to them, and given the production value of that video. And so that makes sense, right? This is the hovering over that skip button in YouTube, and then sometimes you don't skip, right? So we really want to understand that behavior. Then I was having coffee with a guy who runs research for a big music streaming service in New York, and I said, what's the biggest problem you face? He said, the biggest problem we face is that there are 24,000 new songs released every day in the world, and we have to recommend some of those to people's playlists. So we subcategorize them by genre, but then ultimately, a human listens to a 20-second snippet and goes thumbs up or thumbs down. Well, what's wrong with that conscious evaluation? I don't know, maybe you're tired, maybe you're hungry, maybe you're distracted. Who knows? Are you really consciously able to assess that? So I said, oh, that's interesting. Send us a bunch of music. As soon as it's released, you guys decide what a hit or a flop is 3 months later. After 3 months, send us all the data. Send us how many downloads, how many additions to playlists, on and on and on, anything we can predict. And we will, in advance, have people listen to this music, measure their neurologic immersion, and then see if we can predict hits 3 months in advance. And in fact, we could do that with 97% accuracy. But we asked people also, for our straw man, do you like it? Would you listen to it again? Would you recommend it? The conscious prediction, 0 predictive accuracy, but your brain knew a hit song the first time hearing it with almost perfect accuracy. That's kind of messed up if you think about it. You don't consciously know it, but your brain, with technology, is able to capture a hit song. Okay, couple ideas for you. One is, in the US, we've had this kind of creeping socialism. So 10 years ago, if you're a politician, you said you're a socialist, unless you're Bernie Sanders, you would just be voted out of office. We don't like socialists, we like democracy. And so we decided, hey, what if we can try to convince people to support economic freedom? And so we first categorized individuals who had low support for economic freedom. Top of the list, people who live in my state, California. They don't like economic freedom, they want bigger government. So then we went to the laboratory, we developed a library of videos, measured them for neurologic immersion, took the one with the highest immersion, sent it to 1,200 Americans, or a control video about, nature, something benign. And we were able to convince those people who had low support for economic freedom to be more supportive of economic freedom using several different measures, very convincingly. So even Californians were influenced by, hey, actually economic freedom is the source of prosperity. It's the source of reduced infant mortality, reduced disease burden, of people living happier and healthier lives. So a video that just talked about happiness, didn't really talk about economic freedom, just about how prosperity is a function of choice, actually changed people's both opinions but also behaviors. We give them behavioral tasks. So I think this is a powerful tool, neuromarketing in general and immersion in particular, to assess what people value and give them more of what they like. I also think that businesses have a sacred duty to create extraordinary experiences for their customers because those extraordinary experiences are so rare. They're very important to human beings to have experiences with high social emotional value. I have a book coming out in May, which is on happiness. So we know that people who live satisfied lives, who are fulfilled in their lives, have more happy moments. And this book is about how to create more of those happy moments, in particular by having extraordinary experiences. And so we've shown in some very recent research that to truly thrive physiologically, you need to have 6 or more high-value moments per day. So in my language, you need 6 well-defined peak immersion moments per day. Then you're building up your emotional fitness. You're able to really be passionate about life. So we've talked a lot in the literature about wellness or thriving being avoiding being sick or just not being, unhappy. But thriving is being passionate, getting out of bed, having excitement. We're here, you guys. We all came here together because this is going to be valuable for us. And that value is something we've shown you need 6 or more of these high-value moments. If you have 4 per day, then you are just kind of maintaining. If you have 3 or less, you have depressive symptoms. You have low energy and low mood. And we published a bunch of research supporting this, and then created an app called Six, which measures continuously every second your immersion, links to your calendar, and links to your location, and every day gives you a reading. What are the things you're doing that are most important to you? It's personalized. It allows us to not only know what's most valuable to us so we can do more of it and avoid the things we don't get value from. It also allows you to support your friends and family by seeing if they're doing well or poorly. So Gaia shares her data with me, and I go, oh gosh, Gaia's been in the red zone for 3 days. She's not doing very well. I could send her an emoji, or God forbid, I could call her up. Hey, my friend, looks like you're not, let's go grab a coffee. Are you all right? Or conversely, Nick's been in the green zone for 5 days. Oh, you're killing it. Dude, let's go get a beer. We had the best week ever. So that kind of support system is something that really has been declining in this world of, quote, connection with social media, but lack of real human connection. So my hope here in the next 3 years is that 1 billion people begin using this technology so that they can live longer, happier, and healthier lives. We are giving it away for free. I'm going to give you a QR code on the next screen, so if you've got a phone, pull it out. It's a really simple goal. It's like 10,000 steps. I want to get 6 high-value moments a day. What's valuable to you will be different than what's valuable to me. The app will learn about you and will help you be a happier person. So you can try it. It's pulling data from any old wearable, Whoop, Apple Watch, Samsung Galaxy, Google Pixel Watch, Fitbit, or a Ring. I don't really care what kind of wearable you have. If we have an open SDK, then we can pull signals from it and capture every second your neurologic immersion. So it's a real pleasure to be here. I spoke very quickly, but I wanted you to see a lot of what we've done, gain some intuition, so you know how to be a better persuader and why persuading people to do things that are extraordinary, like being together at this event, are so important for us to be happy and to really thrive. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. As our Vice President Andrew Oppmann told you earlier, my name is David Urban. I am the Dean Emeritus and a Professor of Marketing here in the Jones College of Business. I'm really happy to be here today, and this event really has a soft spot in my heart because 3 years ago, when I was the Dean of the College of Business, we made a strategic decision to invest not only in personnel and infrastructure to become thought leaders in the area of neuromarketing. And hiring Dr. Rancati was the first step in that. Also, I and my successor, Dr. Joyce Heems, our current dean, have invested significantly in the infrastructure, which has led to things like our neuromarketing lab and this symposium here today. So this is a great day for me personally. One of the 6 great things that we just heard about earlier. Today it's my honor to introduce Dr. James Four. Now, Jim is the head of insights for a firm called Olson Zaltman, a marketing research firm that was founded by Dr. Jerry Olson of Penn State University and also Dr. Jerry Zaltman, who is now at the Harvard Business School. I will tell you that 40 years ago, when I was a graduate student at the University of Michigan studying marketing, Jerry Olson at Penn State was one of the premier gurus in the area of consumer behavior. And Jerry Zaltman was a kingpin in the area of marketing analytics and all kinds of marketing research. So the two of them joining forces to develop their own firm really made a lot of sense. Over the past several years, Jim has been collaborating with Dr. Georgia Petoskey at the Zicklin Center for Business Ethics at the Wharton School, it's at the University of Pennsylvania, to understand the perspectives of business executives on ESG and sustainability. Today, he will discuss their most recent research, how executives think and feel about the impact of AI on their careers and on the future of their organizations. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Four as he presents Fast, Slow, or Just Right, how executives are experiencing their AI journey. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Urban, and thank you all for attending today. I'll begin by talking a little bit about the methodology that we used to understand the minds of these business executives, and then we'll get into the insights themselves and learn a little bit more about how these executives feel as we approach the world of AI. And we'll conclude with a few implications and thought starters for moving forward. The methodology that we use to do this research is called ZMET. ZMET stands for the Zaltman Metaphor Elicitation Technique. It was created by Dr. Gerald Zaltman at the Mind of the Market Lab at Harvard Business School. It is now taught frequently in graduate school and undergraduate courses on marketing. It's used very frequently in published academic research. We at Olson Zaltman use it in our consulting work with Fortune 500 clients, helping them to understand the thoughts and feelings of their consumers or other stakeholders of interest. ZMET thinking is founded on a couple of principles. One of them is that emotions influence our thinking and behavior all the time. You hear quite frequently in everyday conversation, oh, that was an emotional decision, or that was a rational decision. That is a false dichotomy, because the most rational seeming decisions, the most logical seeming beliefs, all have an emotional component behind them if you dig deeply enough. Which leads to the second point, which is that we can't tell anyone how our emotions are influencing us most of the time. That's because, as Dr. Zach said earlier, most of our thinking is unconscious, including our emotions. So you can ask someone directly, why do you do this? Why do you not do that? Why do you believe this? Why do you not believe that? And they will give you an answer, but that answer is likely to be a rationalization at best, or at worst, completely wrong. It's not that they're trying to deceive you most of the time, it's just that we don't know what we know. We don't know why we behave in the way we behave. So therefore, you need a key that will unlock the door to the unconscious mind. And the key that we use to unlock that door is metaphor. If you can understand the system of metaphors that people use when thinking about a topic, you can understand a tremendous amount about how they feel about that topic. You can understand how they feel better than they know themselves. Metaphor is, why is it so important? Because if you believe the notion that emotion is important, you should believe in the importance of metaphor. Because stop and think about it. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to describe a feeling or an emotion without using a metaphor. You can label that feeling, but you can't describe it. So I can say, I'm in love. I have labeled that feeling. But what does that actually mean? If I've been married for 5 months, I might be head over heels in love. If I've been married for 50 years, my relationship might be as comfortable as an old shoe. My heart might be full. My heart might be breaking. I might be over the moon. I might be carrying a torch for you. That's all love, but it's all different kinds of love and different flavors of love. And the metaphors help us bring that to life. In our methodology, what we do is ask whoever we're interviewing to collect a set of pictures that represent their thoughts and feelings about whatever it is that we want to know about. Those pictures are to be metaphorical, symbolic in nature. We then sit with them for 60 to 90 minutes, uncovering the meaning behind those pictures. As we listen to what they say, we push them further. Why do you believe that? How does that make you feel? We also listen for other metaphors that they use in their dialogue, and we explore those. We elicit new metaphors for other concepts that come up. The session ends up sounding a lot more like an hour on a psychologist's couch than it does a typical market research interview. And by the end of that session, by the end of all of those sessions, when we look at all the data collectively, we have a deep, comprehensive understanding of the psychology of that group of people. The picture gathering assignment that we provide is what we call the ZMET question. And in this case, in our study with business executives from small, medium, and large-size firms all over the world, the question that we asked was this: please provide us 5 or 6 images that represent your thoughts and feelings about how AI will affect you and your organization. And you can see a small cluster of those images here. And as we go through this presentation today, I will remind you that all the pictures that you see, unless otherwise indicated, and all the quotes that you read will be from these global executives with whom we spoke. This is one picture and quote that I thought captured the whole study at a glance. This guy brought in an AI-generated image of a portal, and you can see this little person moving from one place to another through the bottom of that portal into this lush green world from this sort of cavernous type of place. And this guy said to us, this is a portal to a land that may be infinitely better than the land we're coming from. Or is it fooling us? Is it even real? Are we being lured forward with a false promise? It's not a place others have been to. No one can tell you whether or not this is the promised land. I hope it will put us in a better place, but you don't really know. So that sense of forward movement to a place of uncertainty was common throughout our research. And the metaphor that we discovered in people's language and in their imagery that summarizes all those insights is that AI is taking executives on a journey. Now, we're all accustomed to thinking of our lives as a journey. In the US, there's a program for young kids called Head Start. We talk about getting off on the right foot with someone. We talk about a career path. Talk about how we might run into obstacles or roadblocks, or we might get back on track, or when we're facing a big decision that's like a fork in the road. And in cinema, in literature, there's actually a narrative model called the hero's journey. You think about every movie you've ever watched, probably, or most of them. You have the protagonist who starts out in a certain place, either physically or psychologically. They're lured out of that place. They run into challenges and obstacles and enemies and allies, and I, as an executive, am the direct object. AI is moving me on this path, whether I want to go there or not, and I'm kind of along for the ride. And you can imagine how that starts to feel. No one has a map or knows the destination of this journey. This participant brought in a picture of it was a close-up like this of a skier going down the mountain. And he said that symbolizes both exhilaration and danger. And if you zoom out, you don't know what's going to be there. It could be a nice flat land that's no problem at all, or it could be really scary. There could be a big crevasse at the bottom of that where I'm going to tumble off to my death. And as he says, it's an unknown journey. There are all kinds of twists and turns. You don't know what's coming next. And as a business executive, that to me feels scary. That's a common framing. Within that, we have 3 kind of sub-framings that we saw across this segment of executives. There are some people who feel that AI journey is moving too fast. There are others who feel like it's moving more slowly than we think. And then there's another group that feels like the journey is just at the right speed. So let's take a look at all 3 of these segments of people, starting with those who believe that the AI journey is moving too fast. And you can see some of the rather ominous-looking images that those people brought to us to represent those feelings. There is a sense among this group of executives that AI is like possibly the worst thing that could possibly happen to society. And you can see this image of the monster in the middle. She says that monster is AI. It's swallowing all our data. It's swallowing all our knowledge. It's swallowing us, and it could be the end of the world. And you see all this kind of language with this particular group of people. You're not going to know the difference between a human and a machine. It's going to take us back to the 19th century in terms of workers' rights. We're going to enter this world where people have no place and people have no purpose. So I'm really afraid of what that means for society. And along with that comes a sense of personal vulnerability. You think about business executives. They're generally experienced people. They know their stuff. They like being in charge. But that's not the case in this environment. This person brought in an image of a bunch of hikers heading somewhere, but they're surrounded by snow and fog. And he says, in this situation, I'm leading this group metaphorically, but we're all blind. We have no idea where we're going. We don't know where the top of the mountain is. We don't know what lies between us and the top of the mountain. We don't know how far away the top of the mountain is. We don't even know if there is a top of the mountain. And as he says, you can't be a leader in this environment, not in a traditional sense anyway. So in the past, where if I have 20 years of experience, that means something, now it still means something, but it doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to because everything is so uncertain. And that feels vulnerable, and that makes me feel powerless. Powerless at a personal level, and also powerless at a societal level. And AI, as this person says, it's coming at you from all corners. You have to speed up, not only personally, but also at a societal level. AI is moving fast, but democracy and regulation inherently move more slowly. And that means things could really spiral in a bad way, and we need to try to figure out a way to navigate that before it's too late. And finally, a sense of inadequacy. Business executives hate feeling inadequate, but they feel inadequate, or at least some of them do, when it comes to AI. This person brought in an image of a person standing up and making a speech while others are sitting down below looking up. The meaning that he ascribed to this picture, I don't think, was the original intent that Norman Rockwell had when he created this painting, but nevertheless, what he says is, here's a guy standing up, talking, and all these old people are down below his eye level and don't know what he's talking about. He said, in my business, I had an AI developer come in. They were talking to us about their methodology. I had no idea what they were talking about. We all felt like idiots. I'm listening, but I'm not on the same eye level with them. He said when he grew up, his parents had a shop, and he said, I feel like my mom, who refused to use Excel and just kept the books with a pencil and paper. I'm trying to catch up. I don't know what's going on, and I feel like I and we as a company really are not where we should be. So one mindset is that this AI journey is moving too fast. There's fears about the impact on society. There's a personal and societal sense of vulnerability. And there's a sense of inadequacy for me and my company, and a fear that all the knowledge that I have accumulated throughout my career is about to become obsolete. Then there are some people with a little more positive spin on the situation. These are the executives who think that AI, yes, is moving fast, but moving a little bit more slowly than we might think. And these are people who generally feel pretty savvy about AI. This person brought in an image of a mushroom, and he said that's how people think about AI. It's this big thing above the surface that we all see. However, if you know anything about it, you know that below the surface of a mushroom, there's a huge network of whatever underneath the ground. And he said AI is like that too. And he said sometimes people forget that. We get caught up in the frothiness and the hype of AI, but we forget to look below the surface, and we realize that it's actually put together by people, and it's important to understand how that comes together. There's some skepticism among these folks about AI. This person brought in an image of a rickety-looking toy plane that this child is inside, and he said, this looks like a plane, but it doesn't fly. And he said, I've lived through this kind of hype cycle with other technology before. AI is a young field. It has a lot of promise, but there's a lot of hype, a lot of people who don't really know what they're doing, a lot of people who are building things for the sake of building things. Nonetheless, we're moving forward, but we really don't know what we're moving toward or what we're trying to achieve. Again, that journey metaphor. And because of that, these are folks who really feel frustrated by some of the pressure they get internally, both from above and below. This person's mindset is, as he illustrates with the tortoise, slow and steady wins the race. But that's not how people in my organization feel, he says. I've got people who expect that AI can do everything. My son can write code in a couple of days. Why can't AI do that? And he says, it's not that simple. His concern is that he's got shareholders, a CEO, who might lose interest. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses, as he says. But if they can't, they're going to lose interest pretty quickly. And what he's trying to do is navigate that, control those feelings that people have, try to put things in perspective, and, as he says, protect the turtle so it can still be around for the long run. And related to that, there's a fear about losing momentum because there's a lot of hype with AI. And if AI doesn't live up to that hype, people are going to get frustrated. This guy compares it to religion. He says when people get super excited, they tend to leave their logic behind. And when you start thinking about AI, like you think about it as a religion, there's going to be a societal backlash when there's a time of weakness where things don't go as well as you had planned. So he's trying to kind of moderate those perspectives within his organization to keep people's feet more on the ground. So that second group who think AI is moving more slowly than we think, they're kind of more savvy people. They see the promise, but they also see the hype, and they get frustrated by those high and unrealistic expectations that people in their organization can have. And then finally, there are some people who actually believe that this journey is moving just at the right speed. These are people who, yeah, they're on the journey, they recognize it's fast, but they're excited about that. This person brought an image of this soccer ball exploding in the universe, and what this represents to them is science fiction. This stuff is mind-blowing. I just wrote a job description in 5 seconds that would have taken me an hour previously. He says it's a revolution like electricity was. And yes, we have to protect ourselves. Yes, we have to be conscious of how it's going to affect humanity, but we're able to do things now that a few years ago we could only dream of. With that comes a sense of empowerment, a sense of breaking these chains that used to restrict us. Anyone, regardless of their background, can feel liberated, he said, or she said. She is, I don't know how old she was, 45, 50 years old probably. She said, because of AI, I can get back to thinking like I was when I was 21 or 22. Because when you're 21 or 22, you're not restrained by anything. Everything is fresh, everything is new, you're not carrying any baggage. And she says AI makes that possible. You can keep that mindset of a young person. And I want to keep that journey accelerating. This person brought in an image of locks to represent their fear of overregulation. And he said in the US, there's not much regulation, which some people might find a negative thing, but for this person, that was a positive thing. In the EU, he says there's a fear of being fossilized because of all their tight regulations, and that could create, in the end, more problems than it solves. So he talked about the importance of collaboration between the private sector and government to keep that train moving forward. So in short, in summary, you have this segment of people who believe that the AI journey is moving too fast, and there's all sorts of fear and vulnerability associated with that, both at a personal and at a societal level. There are others who feel like AI is moving fast, but a little more slowly than we think. These people tend to be kind of savvy, and they see themselves as realists, and they're trying to keep other people grounded as well. And then you have the segment of people who think AI is moving just at the right speed. They see all the possibilities. They see those possibilities as overwhelmingly positive. They see themselves as part of this revolution, and they don't want to see that slow down. So what does this mean for all of us moving forward? Well, there are implications for employees, for business leaders, and also for AI developers. For employees and for students, for that matter, this is one area where you cannot expect your boss to set the agenda for you because your boss don't know what's going on. It's up to you to set that agenda for yourself and to set your own roadmap for that AI growth on your own and recognize that it has the opportunity to help you think about business challenges and problems in completely new, completely different ways. So it can open your eyes to new paradigms of thinking. For business leaders, it's important to recognize that implementing AI in an organization is just as much a psychological problem as it is a technical problem, because it's critical to understand how the people in your organization feel about AI. Are they looking at this as something that will enhance their work and make them more productive, or are they fearing this because they think it's going to cost them their jobs? Understanding that psychological dimension and massaging it and navigating it is critically important inside an organization. And finally, for AI developers, the value really comes from the interaction between the developer and the user. As we heard from one of our participants, I'm tired of developers just making stuff because they can make it. So it's important to collaborate, to really get value, and it's important also to understand for AI developers that scrutiny on value and the scrutiny on sustainability and how many resources are used by AI, that may be likely to become more intense in the future. Finally, my colleague on this project, Dr. Georgia Pitkoski of Wharton, he's a former executive for 20+ years at the World Bank, has created a concept called AI ability. And he presented this in December at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Summit on AI in Belgrade. And you can see the 5 goals of it right there. Essentially, this AI ability framework is about environmental stewardship, social responsibility, a sense of ethics, and a sense of fairness as that AI train continues to move forward. And it requires smart leadership, smart governance, and perhaps most importantly, a human-centric approach to AI. I can take any questions. We taking questions, or should I be moving along? Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
What's your opinion about AI?
What's my opinion about AI? I don't know.
You presented everything, but you didn't tell us, you haven't told us
Yeah. So my own opinion about it is sort of, we were focusing on their opinion about it because they're the most important. My own opinion is sort of in the middle, I think, that group in the middle that sort of recognizes that, yes, there's a lot of promise here, but you also sort of need to bring people down to earth. Because, for example, in the work that I'm doing where you're trying to understand people's emotions, AI can be an assistant there, but it can't do that work for you. So there are certain fields, mine in particular, where AI is definitely helpful, but also some of the hype is already starting to get ahead of where the reality is. Yes, Sparrows.
Do you think that there are similarities between the post-pre-industrial era and the post-industrial era with the situation that we live today with the AI?
Are there similarities between the post-industrial era and pre-industrial era with how we think about AI? I've actually thought about that a lot. I hope that's true, because back at that time, there was this huge fear that technology was going to essentially make workers obsolete. That, of course, did not happen. And not only did that not happen, it actually created more opportunities for employees. You see some elements of that in the discourse around AI now. I hope that is the case, that it will actually create more opportunities down the road. Yes, Maya.
My question is about ethics and how, I feel like some of the reasons why people can be adverse, people scared of AI, can be around ethics. How do you think we can get them comfortable? How do you think the ethics of AI can be more forefront to get people more comfortable?
How can the ethics take more of a forefront to help people feel more comfortable? A good question. I just saw an article this morning that the EU is taking steps in that direction to make AI more public and putting some ethical guidelines around its use. Personally, I think that's probably what has to happen. I think some sort of collaboration between government and the private sector that can help establish some of those rules and norms will help break down that, will help make sure that AI is deployed in an ethical manner. Okay, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm Dr. Peasley. I'm the director of the Consumer Research Institute and a professor as well in the marketing department with Gaia. I'm introducing Dr. Manuel Garcia, who's the global lead of science activation at Ipsos, integrating cognitive science with market research. He's also the recipient of the Extraordinary Doctorate Award from the University of Barcelona for premier scientific achievements. He's the former SVP of Research and Innovation at the Advertising and Research Foundation and the Neuroscience Director at Nielsen. So he's a great industry thought leader in mobile ad effectiveness, cross-platform advertising, multicultural marketing, and neuroscience applications in consumer research. As the adjunct professor at NYU, he co-authored the first consumer neuroscience textbook, Consumer Science, and he has a forthcoming book, The Psychology of AI. So his extensive research in cognitive science provides valuable insights into consumer behavior, enhancing market research and advertising strategies. Help me welcome Dr. Garcia as he presents The Power of Emotion, Decoding Human Responses for Business Success.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. So as he mentioned, I lead science activation and strategy at Ipsos. And for those who don't know, Ipsos is a large global research agency with like 20,000 people, and we are in 90 countries. But something that's really cool about Ipsos is that we do a very wide range of variety of things, from like creative evaluation to creating concepts for new products, evaluating packages, electoral polling, public opinion research, a lot of that stuff, which it's great to get a holistic, total understanding of market, societies, and people. And what do all these different areas have in common? So one of those things is that they're influenced by emotion. So we've been focusing on doing work around emotion for a couple of years now. And now we are working on like developing new things in the field of affective computing, also called emotion AI. So now I'm going to talk about like work that we've done in the past, but I wanted to like open the conversation so we can continue talking for the rest of the day on how we can take those concepts and create things, create AI systems that they can recognize our emotion, like empathize with us, work better with us, and yeah, so that's the idea. So one of the first things that we had to deal with when we started working on this topic is what is emotion? And it sounds stupid, but like in reality, even within the industry, even within the company, people talk about emotion with the very different concepts and very different narratives. So we had to bring it down, and the way we think about that is aligns with the school of thoughts that's constructivism. And how we understand it is that we first, when we respond to stimulus, we first experiment a change in our brain and our body, and then we interpret what that is as an emotional construct, an emotional level. I'm happy, I'm scared. So for instance, you're at night on a dark alley, and then you hear a very loud sound, and your heart, it's beating faster, and you start to sweat a little bit, and then you interpret those changes as fear. So what's the point with that? I like to make this little metaphor that emotions are like a mix of things, like a gourmet dish that includes different elements, like those bodily sensations, but also how we perceive the world. And one element, one ingredient that's very, very important is our language, our culture, and also the context in which the situation is happening. So one example that I like to use is it's spicy food, that for all of us, it leaves us like this hot, burning sensation in the mouth and elsewhere. And that for some people, that's wonderful and delicious, and for my mother, that's absolute hell. So that's how like culture can take a change in our body and a change in our brain and interpret it in very different ways. So there's one paper that I found super interesting in, I think it's Science, in 2019, that did show how like different cultures talk about emotion and label emotion in quite different ways. And in fact, as it makes sense, cultures that are closer and languages that are closer, they are more similar, and those that are farther, they're less similar. And even like many of you, like this quite an international audience, will know of like some words that refers to emotion that exist in some languages, but cannot be translated. That when we try to translate it to English, not exactly the same thing, or you have to nuance. So that makes measuring emotion very difficult. However, what that same study shows is that no matter how different we refer to an emotional state, we can always explain our emotional state across 3 dimensions, and those 3 dimensions are, in fact, universal. So that that makes it more simple to measure emotion. Those 3 dimensions are, of course, valence, arousal, and control, because no matter how I call it, I can always explain whether I'm feeling more positive, more negative, or somewhere in between, or more excited, more calm, or somewhere in between, more in control of the situation, or more out of control of the situation. And then I can take like that word in Spanish, in Arabic, in Mandarin, and put it somewhere there. Wait. Well, this had to do with like a very 80s-looking GIF situation, but it doesn't really matter. So what we developed with that is like something very simple, just asking people in their own word, how do you feel in your language in this given context, and then tell me if you're feeling like more positive, more negative, more intense, more calm, more in control, or out of control, with a slider. And with that, we can also like build a very large database with which we can do very cool things. But like there's a reflection that I want to put out there, because I thought that I was thinking this morning, because I'm writing, as was mentioned in the introduction, I'm writing a book called The Psychology of AI, and I was revising a chapter on emotion AI this morning, and I was thinking like actually like machines don't feel. They recognize pattern. We train them on recognizing patterns and the way we train them. So if we train them in like there are 5 emotions that have 5 words in English, it will be trained like that. It will be more empathetic towards English. And if we are talking of an emotion that is not any of these 5, it will not understand it. However, if we can use like this dimensional system, they are more capable of like understanding that full range. So, well, that's a reflection that I wanted to leave out there, because I think it's very important as we develop systems that need to understand and respond to how we are feeling. So yeah, as I said, we developed this system it's very simple, to capture emotion. That's in your words, how do you feel, and how positive, how negative, how intense, how calm, how in control, how out of control. We did that in some foundational R&D across 10 different languages in 10 different countries. We actually have a data set of emotional images, sort of like the IAPS, the International Affective Picture System, but that we have developed so we can use it. That's the Ipsos database of emotional pictures. So we use those across these 10 countries. We do find similar distribution, which makes sense. This is not by chance either. We try different labels to make sure that the words we use in our survey does not bias the research. So good news. But with that, we also like building a very large database where we have words from different countries in different languages that we can actually compare across these 3 dimensions. So that's cool. And something interesting that we found, one of many findings, of course, is like when we're looking at happy, like what we would think is the most universal of all emotions that could ever exist, which is happy. When we use like the translation, or one of the translations in Arabic, Zaid, we find that it's as positive. Valence was the same, so it was as positive in English in the United States as in Arabic in Saudi Arabia. But the arousal was like 20 points higher. The intensity of the emotion was 20 points higher in Arabic, in Saudi Arabia. So are we talking about the same emotion? It's not only nuanced, like small difference, it's like a whole 20% higher. So that's pretty significant. So just leaving it there with that thought, and I'm gonna move to briefly two cases that we presented with clients using this system. This one is at ESOMAR and the other one at ARF. So this is one study that we did to measure the emotional response to different fragrances for Sol de Janeiro, which is one of our clients. They had a very fun, you like Sol de Janeiro? I like the ads. They had like this good problem to have. Like they show all these like limited edition perfumes, and they like sell out very quickly. So they kind of like look at velocity to see which one to make permanent. Social media, it was so good. So they wanted to go into like find some differentiation to like define which ones to launch permanently and in what markets. So obviously, I think a good way to go is to look into emotions when we're talking about fragrances, because when we smell something, it's not our sensory receptors in the nose, but it activates olfactory bulb, and then very critically activates the amygdala that activates to emotion, but that's also very close to the hippocampus, and that also explains why fragrances are so capable of triggering very vivid memories. So, well, for these reasons, we focus on emotion. We looked at different things. We looked at biometric measures. We used like some facial coding, although it's kind of hard because you're like smelling something, so it's blocking the face, so it's kind of complicated. But then we used this system that I was talking about, where we asked them, how do you feel? And how do you feel in these 3 dimensions? And then some projective techniques where they would choose some pictures and explain why. So the whole thing brought up a pretty cool story. So I'm going to show you this one example of someone responding to the fragrance that I'm going to focus on, that we'll call fragrance 6, because that's how far we can we can talk. Oh no, can you play it? Can you play it from there? Oh. Oh, it's not, the video's not there. Is it a PDF? Oh? Oh, well, that sucks. I don't know, it's fine. You know, she's saying things. It's mango, coconut. Da, da, da. But it's, you know, it's more fun when she says it. Okay. Oh. I think things are. Oh, yeah. Oh. Well, it's not really critical. It's fine. Yeah, we can go without that, because it actually did not. It didn't really give us much, so we can skip. It's fine. But then, like we wanted to find like differentiation, and that's something that they couldn't find with a lot of their market metrics. So here we're looking at like 6 fragrances, same ones in China and in the United States, and then you can see that most of them are actually performing pretty similar on what's valence and arousal. There's a clear winner in both markets. That's number 3. That's both in China and in the United States. Really good. But there's only one fragrance that show a big difference between China and the United States, which is number 6. And it's a pretty big difference, like a good 10 points of higher valence in the United States than it was found in China. So here, you know, for the first time in looking at different metrics, we found some differentiation, which is something that we find a lot with the systems, with things that we don't find with other systems of evaluation. We looked at the words they were using to describe this fragrance in the different markets. Something that we saw, similar to what I just explained, is that when they were talking about this fragrance and using happy was happier in the US than it was in China. They used, you cannot see it here, but there was a higher frequency of surprise in China than in the US, and in the US it was more like energy and excitement on the words they used. And then we looked at the images they chose to describe these fragrances and how they explain why they were using those images. And mostly, this fragrance that we didn't hear it, but it's like very beach and peach and coconut and mango. It would evoke, like in the market in the United States, it would evoke images and scenarios of the beach, and that's something that would not happen in China. So that's the thing that was behind this difference that we finally found on preference. So that was some interesting insight that we just presented at the SMR Congress in September in Athens. So that was cool. And this is another study that we did with Google, specifically with YouTube, because they wanted to understand what's the role that emotion plays on building long-term brand effectiveness for brands that advertise on YouTube. So for that, we used like different approaches. Creative Spark is the signature creative evaluation test of Ipsos that also includes facial coding and a lot of different market-validated KPIs. We used emotions to us, like valence, arousal control, and the different words. We also used Ipsos Bayesian nets to model the impact of the different emotions on these KPIs that are market-validated, and also to model the impact of different emotions on other emotions, which build a really cute story. So one thing that we found is that valence, just valence by itself, which kind of makes sense if it makes me feel more positive or more negative, could explain 28% of the variance of long-term brand effectiveness of ads on YouTube. But what's more interesting is when we were looking at what specific emotions were more effective in driving variance in long-term brand effectiveness. And we saw that, relaxing, calm, whatever, but empathy and surprise. That's very interesting because they're not like intrinsically like more positive, like because we saw that valence was explaining most of the variance, but they were like very critical in leading to long-term brand effectiveness. And then something cool that we found, so we did this thing where we mapped what emotions lead to other emotions, or where emotions are more likely to happen or to lead to the other emotions. So you can see happy and excited are more connected, happy and indifferent are negatively connected. And obviously you see all the positive on one side, all the negative on one side, but something that was very interesting to find is that there were two emotions that served as a bridge between the positive and the negative. And those were empathy and surprise. And that's really critical when you're building like the storyline of a creative. So Paul was actually showing the ad that I want to show before, and he was talking about how our brain likes something that's unexpected. So breaking through the clutter is a big, very important thing for your ad to be effective and to increase long-term brand effectiveness in a brand when you advertise on YouTube or elsewhere. So a very interesting strategy is to not have a story that's all positive or a story that's all negative, but to mix it up. And how do we mix it up? We can use any of these emotions that are bridging empathy or surprise. And there's this ad that I don't know if we can play, but Paul played it before, that does it very well. I don't know if we can replay it, if it's easy. If not, it doesn't matter, because Paul just showed it.
Ladder. Life insurance so good, they're gonna want you dead.
I'm okay, guys. But seriously, intentionally killing a policyholder will void all life insurance benefits.
So it's the same ad that you saw like 40 minutes ago, but now you can think of those two things. One, you want to break through clutter, you want to bring attention, and a way to do it is to build a storyline that's different, and to bring those things together. Empathy and surprise were here like very critical. So this was a cool one example of I don't know how many ads we tested there, but it was a lot. So just with that, and just to finish, I just wanted to bring those things and have those reflections as we are now working on modeling. We're doing a lot of work on synthetic data, so modeling emotion to like build synthetic emotional responses, or different ways in which we can model things that we've been collecting data on for many years, and augment samples, or just be able to predict or prescribe what are the emotions that someone will feel when they see it, just based on past experience. So with that, I just wanted to like open that discussion, and I look forward to talking more about it during the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Tell you.
Talking about the emotions with the study, I know it was put somewhere that you used linear regression to kind of differentiate between emotions. And you also said about different languages and different range of emotions, some of which might not be translated in English. I wanted to ask, for the other emotions during your analysis process, do you discard them or do you kind of use them for something else? Sorry, it's more of a statistic.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring, because we get them. We get them all, and the idea is that we have all the different emotions that people have used or expressed unprompted, just by themselves, and we can map them on these 3 dimensions, so they can be compared.
So it's more like grouping them into a specific, I guess, English-related emotion, as opposed to letting them fall by the wayside.
And we can also like compare in that way, compare with like different languages. And something that we can do sometimes that's very useful is to cluster them. So instead of like me coming up with like describe out of these 10 emotions which one you feel, from the whole database that we have, we cluster them, and then from these clusters that occupy kind of like the whole 3 dimensions, you can pick it from here. So there's a lot of things that we can do out of that. So you just give me ideas. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Lucy Matthews. I'm a colleague here of Gaia's and a professor of marketing in the College of Business. So it is my honor to introduce today Dr. Kimberly Rose Clark, a distinguished neuroscientist and expert in consumer behavior. She earned her PhD at Dartmouth College and currently serves as a lecturer in the Department of Psychology and Brain Science at Dartmouth. She launched the college's first consumer neuroscience course in 2016, the first course of its kind in the US, exploring how the brain and body measurements relate to marketing strategies. She is currently establishing the college's inaugural Climate Communication Research Collaborative, an interdisciplinary initiative that aims to measure the effectiveness of climate communications across diverse audiences. She specializes in understanding the influencers of citizens' attitudes, motivations, and behaviors. Her expertise is designing, implementing, and analyzing research to explain and predict civic and consumer behavior. She is currently collaborating with MTSU and the Neuromarketing and AI Lab in 2 studies related to climate change and AI. Beyond academia, Dr. Clark co-founded Merchant Mechanics, a firm that integrates behavioral psychology and neuroscience to analyze real-world consumer actions. Her work exemplifies the fusion of academic research and practical business applications, positioning her as a lead authority in understanding the neuromechanisms driving consumer decisions. So let's welcome Dr. Clark as she presents Bias Framing in Energy Communication through the Lens of Neuroscience. Dr. Clark.
Hi, everybody. This is such a meta moment because, yes, a decade ago, we started the first consumer neuroscience and neuromarketing course. Dr. Garcia wrote the first textbook, co-authored the first textbook, and at the time asked me to be one of the authors. And so he charged me with writing the chapter on the future of this new field. How am I supposed to know what this new thing is going to do? But I remember touching on the future will involve AI in some capacity. And so this meta moment is here right now. And I have worked with a number of brands over 2 decades in advertising and research. Thank you. But I had a little bit of an existential crisis in 2015 where I had my second child and I kept paying attention to the news and thinking that, you know, what are my skills going to be used for as I move forward with my professional career? Are they going to be using those skills to help Hershey sell another candy bar or Levi's another pair of jeans or making someone's ad a little bit better? Or am I going to focus what I know on the brand that we all share, and that is communications that center on climate and sustainability, because we are at a critical mass, and I will talk about that in context with a little bit of what I will talk about. I want to give you a context just as I did on where I've been, but I also want to contextualize what kinds of measures, what kinds of flavors of research studies that we are doing in terms of their relevance and in terms of, we're always tactically oriented in how we think about original research using these multiple data streams. So, why is this important, right? Do we have a advancer? You did not get it? You have it. Well, as you find my slide, I can just say what it said. No, that's a good visual, actually.
Is it you? No, it's you just have to have it somewhere.
Oh.
It doesn't.
Got it. Has this?
If you want to stand at the podium, they can turn that one on.
That's fine. I'll use this.
Whichever one you want.
Yeah, I'll just use this and do 2 hands.
For the video.
Okay. So there's a fellow, as we wait, there was a fellow that founded the Media Lab at MIT, Nicholas Negroponte. And back when the Media Lab was started, he said something that was very relevant to our field, and that was that, you know, today, computers were brand new, right? Today, computers are computers, right? We're all focused on them. They're very salient to us. We have to think about using them. But in the future, they're just going to be a part of our life. And in the same capacity, some of the tools that we're using now, and we were developing back in the day that were big and clunky, you know, now iMotions, the platform, the footprint, the costs has allowed these kinds of measures to be captured at scale from things that, as Paul Zach had mentioned, you wear every day with wearables. And so it's really the neuroscience is now going to be integrated into everyday life, and it already is, and it will continue to do so. And I hope to share some of the specifics about exactly how it might happen. So. I'll just keep talking so I don't bore anyone, because I'm standing here in front of all of you. So just to give you a context, we are a group about 2.5 years ago, and that's how long this has been in the planning, a group of earth scientists within Dartmouth came to me and said, you know, we have this massive interest. We understand the science behind energy use and sustainability, and the numbers aren't good, and it is a branding issue, right? And so they wanted to identify the kinds of areas of weakness that the current literature on climate communications had. And so a lot of that climate research has been done using self-report. And that's really what I want to focus on when my slides finally show. So Gaia and I have established a really wonderful collaborative relationship where we've just launched. So this is all very brand new at Dartmouth. And what we're called, we are the Dartmouth Initiative for Research on Climate and Energy Transition, because those kinds of communications are going to really matter. And so we had 2 different research collaborations that some of you may actually have participated in these studies. And I'll show you a little bit about their purpose, what mattered. Ooh, slides. Okay, all right. Oh, there, can I go back? Yeah, I can. Okay, so here's our direct lab, Dartmouth Initiative for the Research on Energy and Climate Communications, because they are going to need to transition from these rational calls to action that we currently see most of the time. Okay, so why does this matter, right? So in 1990, the United Nations International Panel for Climate Communications put out the first of its kind seminal concrete evidence that showed that climate emissions were going to be a bellwether warning of what's to come. And since that time, they produced 5 more of these publications, each with an increased urgency to do something. And yet those numbers still are rising. And they also, the International Panel for Climate Communications also produced a playbook or a guide for their authors. And that guide is the Principles for Effective Communication and Public Engagement on Climate Change. Interestingly, they have tactics, and Paul Zak had mentioned tactics as well. You know, be a confident communicator, talk about the real world, not abstract ideas, connect with what matters to your audience, tell them a human story, lead with what you know, right? Use the most effective visual communications. So this is our starting point to instruct climate scientists to speak to lay audiences about things that matter to all of us. Why is that problematic, right? So the IPCC wasn't alone. There has been myriad research on climate communications and their efficacy, how well are they doing. Unfortunately, the bulk of the kinds of research on climate communications has been conducted by climate scientists, right? So they're not experts in persuasion like us, we're in neuroscience and motivation. They are climate scientists doing their best pass at asking explicit questions, assuming people are rational, and going with their findings. And their findings are often disjointed, conflicting, contradictory. Why is that? Because we don't always do what we say we're going to do. We don't always remember accurately what we've done in the past. And in climate science, what they recognized when asking people self-report like this is that they call it the intention-action gap, where we report saying that we're going to do something or that we have done something for the environment when we actually do not, that behavior doesn't materialize. And I want you to think about this. You know, Manuel was talking about the different dimensions of emotional measurement, and this kind of connects to that. So when we all walked in here, there was no baseline emotion. Each of us came in, some of us were happy, some of us were stressed, some of us were preoccupied, sleepy, right? In the same way, everyday semiotics of things like this that we communicate land very differently across different individuals. Some of you may see some of these things and be disgusted by them. Some of you may see some of these things and it'll make you hungrier, right? But one of, aside from, the tenet of self-report, if you hear one thing about consumer neuroscience, it's don't just rely on self-report. Don't throw it out, but there are so many other rich measures here. Second tenet is this: we are not all processing this information in the same way. It doesn't land across sender and receiver in the same way. So the interesting thing is that oftentimes we're not even aware of how we feel, right? We just have maybe a nebulous feeling about our attitudes or our opinions about some of those semiotics or those icons that we see in the world. But we have to up our communication game when it comes to the climate, because this is going to kill us all. And so action needs to be taken where we account for things that matter, right? So we assume that people are going to have the need to receive a key topic, a key message, but understand that those individuals may need that message framed a little bit differently so it lands the way we want it to land and actually change their behavior. A second issue is the message framing. That does matter. And I'll give you an example about the ways that we're going to use cognitive biases and how we integrate them into the communications that we use. And the third, and the assumption of AI is AI is logical, rational, process-driven, right? We're not. We're terrible at this, right? So we are irrational decision makers, and we're biased by information and how information is presented. So going back to the self-report, if you have T0 at the red X, if you ask people, did you recycle in the past 6 months? Yeah, and they may actually recall that they did. In the future, same thing. Do you intend to recycle or do something pro-sustainability? They'll say yes. But here's reality, right? They're taking that recycling and dumping it in the trash. They don't recall they're doing that. They don't intend to do that, but that's what's going to happen. And so we need to understand that climate scientists do have limitation with self-report, but we have the ability with some of these brain and body measures that we've been talking about today to get to other aspects of different drivers of our decisions. So not only the share of voice or what people are saying, but also their cognitive processes, their affective processes, how they're feeling. And then ultimately, those richer data streams can then be used to predict an outcome behavior that's more accurate than self-report alone. And so these are some of the measures. Again, Gaia's lab and my lab mirror each other, so we have identical setups. We're able to do collaborations without confounds, which is a very tricky thing to do in science, especially getting down to things like frame rates and things like that. But we have the ability to understand not just beyond self-report, but we're not biasing these measures by time. We're not having somebody think about themselves, construe themselves in the future or in the past. We're actually measuring in-moment responses. And those responses could be triangulated or made into inferences when it comes to predicting outcome behaviors. For example, I collaborated a number of years ago with Paul Zak for the DARPA work that we ran. And we were looking at differences in the visual processing of people during a scene of a very sad advertisement about a child having cancer. And we wanted to understand whether or not we could work to predict who would donate and who would not donate after they watched the ad. And we were actually able to run a support vector model to predict at 89% accuracy back then who would be donating and versus not donating. And so once you do a number of these studies, then you can start making some inferences and triangulating data to look at different shared correlations. So I'm trying to balance the science and the fun here. Okay, so what are these rich kinds of pieces of information? And again, Manuel touched on, we talked about the arousal and the valence, but we have these very specific data streams coming in, and sometimes an outcome behavior that you need to make is pretty clear. There's a bear, I need to go. right? I'm going to get out of harm's way. I have survival instincts. So I want to introduce something called an associative network, which is kind of similar to, if any of you have familiarity with AI models. But we have these associative networks in our brains that have shared connections with the concept. So in that example, you have bear being chased by bear. Something that might immediately come to mind might be their teeth, right? That's going to be very quick when you're thinking about being chased by a bear. Then we might think about fur, right? We might think it's brown or black, depending on where we live. But we also might kind of remember a TikTok video we saw about somebody getting chased by a bear, or when we were a kid, we might remember a movie scene from childhood, right? But those connections are not as fast to respond because they're not as closely encoded to the core concept as things like teeth and fur. And this kind of association is the basis of our neural networks when it comes to different things that we learn and the utilities that we learn about different concepts. One of the things that we also encode isn't just what happened, the phenotypics, right? The fur, the skin, the teeth. We also encode that automatic physiological response that we had, right? So in this case, we sweat. And then we also encode that fear is associated with that sweat in this context. So understanding this kind of concept where we have these different associative networks is really key for driving the responses that you're going to see. So, we have the bear again, clear and present danger, and we have to make a decision about that bear. But other decisions aren't so easy to articulate or to make a behavior, right, to form a behavior. We might not even be aware of how we're explicitly feeling about the ideologies of particular individuals. So we have very large decisions. We have tons of decisions that we make every day, great and small. This one was a big one, right? But we have every day tons of decisions. Our brain, as Paul said, we want to conserve energy. I say our brains are lazy, glass half full, glass half empty. But what we do in conserving energy is we utilize mental shortcuts or cognitive biases or heuristics that are taking those associative networks, finding the closest links that we have to come up with snap judgments again and again and again. And they can be banal, like, what am I going to wear today versus what toothpaste am I going to buy? But they could also be a big deal. And on that side of the screen over there, you can see that there's 50 cognitive biases that are called up. These are just different brain shortcuts that we can take advantage of. And from those cognitive biases, the important thing is I see them as a medium, like a paint on a canvas, where if we embed them in our communications on climate, we can persuade individuals because we're lazy and people are going to look at that content, see a cognitive bias, and go with it. It's like, for example, you have the bias of scarcity, right? That's Coca-Cola showing you that that product is in high demand, there's scarcity for it, it's gonna run out. Appeal to authority for the toothpaste, trust the brands dentists and hygienists use. The inferior third choice, or the decoy effect, is the bottom left for the iPhones, where you have the middle choice as being the inferior choice. Bandwagon effect, America's favorite mascara, so you better be putting that on your eyes too. So we implement these different kinds of biases in communications about climate to see how they change people's attitudes, change their actual physiological responses, and ultimately we put them into models to predict behavior. And I'll get to those. So before I get to those, ask yourself, would you be more likely to donate to a climate cause if I showed you this advertisement from them? Or this one? Okay. So if you're a typical individual as a participant in our lab, you would say both are equally motivating, right? But I'm going to show you this. So if I show you one of those two images, and then I show you this face very quickly, 500 milliseconds, half a second, and I ask you to rate how positive or negative or how persuasive or non-persuasive that face is, your response is going to change depending on which of those climate images you saw just prior. So that is an implicit read that we have of someone's inability to distinguish the valence or the persuasiveness with self-report, but we can see when they're actually using that face. And why use that face? Think about those dimensions Manuel had mentioned, arousal and valence. This is a very unique stimuli because you have very high arousal, right? Something's happening, right? That person knows something you don't know, and you want to find out more information about it. So that is a surprise face. So ambiguous valence, we don't know if it's positive or negative. Individuals that suffer from depressive disorders will interpret that face as how they're feeling. So it's a diagnostic tool as well. That's an implicit read. So it's like a mirror. So that's one way that we are taking in comparing, understanding the relative sensitivity that explicit response has compared to these implicit or automatic associations. Okay, so again, we wanted to take the cognitive biases like we were talking about and understand how differently framed messages land. And in this case, our first study was looking at classic loss aversion. I'll get to that. So we wanted to understand whether or not if we created the presentation in a positive way, meaning framed all of the content emotionally positive, compared to if we framed it in a negative way, how do people respond, right? Do their responses change as a function of the valence? Also, because our country is so divided right now, our core paths, what we're doing is called segmentation, so citizen segmentation. We're trying to get down and target as refined groups as we can with bespoke messaging, right? So our first pass is looking at these responses to see if there's an interaction effect with political ideology and the valence framing of the content. And so this is just Kahneman and Tversky, classic loss aversion, asymptotic S-curve with gains and losses. The losses are felt more strongly than an equivalent gain. So losing 10 cents hurts more than winning 10 cents feels good. Right? So that's the basic framing that we communicated in this content. And the second question we wanted to ask was, did AI, in generating this valence frame content, did human response to the AI change compared to when a human made the content? Okay. And so here's where the AI starts to come on in. So the human-made content, we have much more control over that, whereas AI does whatever AI wants to do. We can obviously train it and tune it. But in order to specifically achieve our goal, we created different types of content that we had classified areas of interest. And so every piece of content had the same kinds of information. Our goal with understanding that information was to classify it so that we could understand whether or not, so we think about these as decision utilities, right, visually. So if something is framed positive, are you going to change how you consume the information, how you make those choices? And so each one of these pieces of content, human imagery, there's a statistic that's either framed in a positive way or a negative way when it comes to something about the climate. There's a color statement, a black and white statement, but all of these different AOIs are now used as classifiers in AI models. And again, we're collaborating with Gaia's group here, which has been wonderful and a very happy experience, I must say. But so here's what we're going to do. So this is just an example of where the AI comes in. So we take all those we take all of those classified AOIs or areas of interest, right? And we can run them in a hidden Markov model. So say if we want to predict something we don't know, right? We want to say predict what kinds of AOIs or decision utilities were being consumed as a function of the valence of the content. But we don't know what the AOIs are, but we do know a bit about the political ideologies, and we do know something about the valence. So what the hidden Markov model is doing is looking at this hidden layer and trying to predict the order of the types of areas of interest that are being used by conservatives compared to liberals. Is everybody tracking with that? Okay, so this will help inform different models, and there's a lot I have to say. So, so going back to this associative model where we have different levels of connectivity between content in our core concept, we have another type of study where we use one of these automatic responses as well. Some people call it implicit. There's debate about that. I like to say automatic. It gets around the debate. But it was a national, it's an at-scale study where we're looking at differences in those neural associations for climate-oriented concepts and non-climate-oriented concepts. And this is a study, it's a version of an implicit association task, but it's not an implicit association task, and I can get into the minutia of that, but just know, I'll walk you through what you need to know here. So when we have these associations and we can understand their difference, the closer that relationship is, or that decision utility is with that core concept, the faster you're going to respond to it. And that can vary across all of us depending on what we've learned over time, right? And so a sequential priming task, these were done by Benoji in, I would say, 1986. And Fazio 1986. And so these tasks are very simple, but let me just put a comparison. If I ask you to rate how positive or negative this word is, you're going to explicitly say, that's positive, it's pleasurable, right? How about this word? Miserable, it's negative. So I have you, I give you an emotional target word, and then I ask you to respond. And you do, you're good at it. Right? So I could do this, I ask you again, right? I give you another positive word or another negative word, and I ask you to explicitly say, is this positive or negative? And you'll respond. But sometimes I want to ask you something indirectly, so I can't just ask you. So instead of just asking you about that target word, I present a prime before that target word, and then I ask you to rate the target word, but it's already been primed beforehand with another emotional word. Now, so say vacation, pleasurable, good, right? So that should be a very quick association to make. Vacation, miserable. That should take a little slower unless you had a really lousy last vacation, right? And then that would be a faster response. So great. So there are a lot of tasks out there. Sequential priming tasks have been used for a number of years. There's a lot that goes into it. Am I being timed, by the way? Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Whew. I thought that was 3:20. So there have been a lot of research, and there's been some conjecture in the field, but there hasn't been a lot of systematic control. And going back through the literature and finally finding how to control the right way to generate a test like this to really get at these automatic responses has been something we're happy that we've developed. But what we don't understand is if you have emotional words, they're easy to have 4 conditions. You have positive congruent, negative congruent, and the other 2 options. But what is not understood is whether or not we have these same kinds of implicit associations with things that are oriented towards climate and sustainability, right? Because we all just take those as sort of objective terms, but we wanted to understand whether or not different climate and energy action words were like the valence words in classic literature, if they also had a valence or this automatic association. And we wanted to do that for climate words. So recycling, for example, we all think about that as positive. So if you have pleasurable as the target and recycling as the prime, if you believe that recycling is positive, you're going to be faster to respond to that. If you don't have that strong of a belief, you're going to be slower to respond. So that's sort of the basis of our task. So we started off with climate-oriented words, and this is the first time that this has been done. So this is, I'll show you the data too, this is really great. We did a pilot study at Dartmouth, and then we expanded it to MTSU. And so what we've done is we've replicated the classic sequential priming task, and we are now doing it with images that we have validated in different emotional dimensions as well. And so from there, we can understand and measure the we can generate a primed score, a priming score for each individual that takes this test to determine how much, the extent to which we were able to prime them. So recycling, miserable, right? Landfill, pleasurable, that should be incongruent. Landfill, miserable, that should be congruent. And so what we found when we looked at our first pilot study, we have these 4 conditions, 2 of congruent and 2 of incongruent. And we found we were able to replicate the findings from the classic research from '86. So that's a good thing. And the importance of these tests and the big debate was that the words really had to matter, and the researchers would say that you'd have to have very specific words. They couldn't evoke too much arousal, too little arousal, but they would never share their words with researchers, so it was a hard group to build from. So when we chose our words for the climate, we made sure that we controlled for things like, letter length, syllables, the frequency of use in the English language. But what we found was we were able to replicate with climate words the same thing that classic work has been done with just pure valenced words. And so you can see right here, this is from our first study, so you can see people are very quick to respond positive to positive. We also had neutral words in there, and so this subtraction is a neutral subtraction from a baseline measure. And so we find that people are very quick to respond to positive and congruent and slower to respond to incongruent. And it's in those incongruent pairings that we want to look at something even further. We want to look at whether or not the political ideologies changes the strength of that response priming. So that is sort of the second flavor of what we're working on in terms of the online research. And then finally, we're working with NOAA right now. They have an ability to contact you at your mobile level. Their research is going to become ever more important in terms of climate, and their communications to individuals is only going to be more needed moving forward as we begin to adapt to climate change. And so they wanted to understand how to really speak to people to get them out of harm's way. Climate deniers, right? People that just are too stubborn to move, that will be killed if they do not. So we are working with them to integrate, this is a lot of stuff, but so right now the kinds of information that they have to work on are some basic stuff about you, where you live, your socioeconomic status, the last time a severe event has occurred in your area, how resilient is your area to getting impacted by another severe hit. What we are doing in our measurement is integrating these in-moment responses to help better train large language models like this, which work on probabilities. So it's just Bayesian probabilities, there's a weighting. And so understanding where we can have their sentiment analysis from their social media feeds integrated into these models. And we can also have the in-moment measures. We can understand things about their political ideology, which allows probabilistic messages to be sent out, bespoke, tailored to regions, and then for the catastrophic or life-threatening events where they are able to ping your phone, we're working to get to tailored messaging at the individual level to be most resonant to get people out of the way. So that's kind of that's 3 flavors of research that we're doing. We're also working on, the final thing I'll say, is we're working on a study that is a replication plus extension study. There is a government professor named Jennifer Jarrett at Dartmouth, and she, prior to her work, we always knew that there was a feeling of warm glow was correlated with actual sustainable behaviors, but there was no causal link. We didn't know for sure if that warm glow feeling caused sustainable behaviors. So she worked to induce warm glow feeling by having individuals, talk about the last time they did something pro-environment, and she measured the impact, and so she established this causal link for the first time. What we're doing is replicating plus extending that study to see whether or not the warm glow has impact, and whether or not it impacts memory encoding, and whether or not there's a physiological response associated with it. Okay. And so this is our team. You have Sarush Vasogi, he's from computer science. Heather Urey and Holly Taylor are at Tufts University. They're both in the psychology department. Carl Renshaw and Eric Osterberg are in the climate, they're earth science professors at Dartmouth. And then we have other touch points of communication related to health, which I think are really cool and important. You have Diane Gilbert-Diamond. She is at Dartmouth Health. She's a researcher on communications. There's going to be a lot of climate-oriented health issues to be aware of, and also to train people to not behave in certain ways to exacerbate those. And then, what? Okay, I'm done. All right, this is the last slide. Actually, and then Arjun Stalk Center for Interacting Minds, and this is the last slide I'll say. So basically, because I'm talking about the environment, this is AI and its impact on the environment, so by use type. So this is something to always consider, that while we're using AI, it's consuming our resources as well. Okay? Okay, so I probably am out of time for questions, but I'll leave you with that. This is Tor Wager. He's the director of the Dartmouth Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience Lab, who said, in some sense, there's no closer field to AI than neuroscience. Okay, all right.
All right. So I am Dr. Keith Gamble. I'm director of our Data Science Institute, and I'm very happy to support the great work in neuromarketing happening at MTSU. I'm also honored to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jessica Wilson. Dr. Wilson is a global director and product specialist of the iMotions, an IT company based in Copenhagen, specializing in human behavior research software. iMotions software, if we've already heard about, is hardware-agnostic platform that integrates into a single application to uncover how people think, feel, and engage with the world. She holds a PhD in neuroscience from Northwestern University, and she is published in the Journal of Neurophysiology. She's an award-winning science communicator. She has a talent for making complex neuroscience accessible, shaping industries like advertising, gaming, healthcare, and human factors. She's also a strategic leader in sales engineering, research and development, and marketing, blending scientific insight with business innovation. A dedicated mentor and career coach, guiding scientists as they navigate the bridge between academia and industry. She supports with iMotions the development of neuromarketing labs across the world. With iMotions, she is a proud partner of our MTSU Neuromarketing and AI Lab and sponsor of this event. Beyond work, and this is really cool, by the way, I had to look this up. She is vice president of the Midwest Naginata Federation, a nonprofit devoted to the promotion and study of the Naginata, a Japanese pole arm in the American Midwest. Help me welcome Dr. Jessica Wilson.
Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and I also want to thank the Jones College of Business for having us here and for throwing this amazing event. And I also want to congratulate Gaia on this momentous occasion of opening up the neuroscience, neuromarketing, and AI lab. Seems like a couple years ago when I was here last to talk about iMotions and neuromarketing in the business school, and just going from that one station to what we've built here today. Guy, this is a momentous occasion, so I'm very excited for this, and I'm very excited for all of you to be able to capitalize on the resources that are now available to you. So I want to talk about tools today, and what kinds of tools are available, how these tools are evolving, and the kinds of tools that you have access to and how we can think about and evaluate them. The reason iMotions is here and the reason I'm talking about this stuff today is that iMotions is the software platform that is behind the Neuromarketing and AI Lab here and in many other labs across the country and the world. So iMotions is a software that is devoted to biosensor research, or the use of physiological tools to look at human behavior. And by doing that, we integrate different kinds of sensor inputs, integrate and synchronize them, and allow you to interpret them in a holistic manner so you can get a clear picture as to how someone is reacting to X. So here's kind of the full lexicon or library of tools that we work with in our biosensor toolkit. These can range from things like screen-based eye tracking, EEG, which is the brain waves, voice analysis, facial expressions, heart rate, skin conductance, and many others. And these tools are really useful in neuromarketing, and we've been kind of a fixture in neuromarketing practice for a long time because of this. Each tool gives you a new piece of information. So eye tracking gives you a sense of attention. Skin conductance gives you a sense of arousal. EEG can delve into more kind of nuanced cognitive measures like motivation or workload. And it's really when you combine these together and you look at sort of this human angle across multiple modalities that you get this kind of clear view as to human behavior and how someone is reacting to something. And we've been kind of prevalent in the neuromarketing space, both in academia and in industry. And this is just a smattering of some of the examples that we've seen from some of our clients. This can range from, is this a laser? No. There we go. So this can range from using eye tracking glasses in menu studies, like Texas A&M has done. Expedia's usability lab uses facial expressions and facial EMG and eye tracking to look at what demographics respond to what elements when people are booking vacations or hotels for the first time. We've had a lot of inroads in tourism experience across multiple departments and schools. We've done fragrance and cosmetics research, so we have a webinar with Clarins, that's a client of ours. We've moved into the virtual reality space, which is really exciting, which you guys are going to delve into. And then we've also worked with other industries or agencies like SalesBrain, for example, that use neuroscience methods and physiology in things like retail, e-commerce, advertising, and many others. Beyond neuromarketing, we're actually making inroads in many other domains, so things like education, communications, even architecture, design, gaming, defense, and many others. So I always say, anytime you're looking for someone's reaction to X, usually there's some room for us in there that we can try to figure out, help you out a little bit with that question. So very briefly, MTSU is in good company with schools all over the world that also use our software and hardware, and then also many commercial labs as well. So we really like to sit squarely at that intersection between academia and industry. Now, when it comes to AI, I find that this is a more recent development and one that's been accelerating quite quickly. I always used to say that, well, we don't make a lot of our tools, like we don't make any of the hardware we use, and similarly, we don't make a lot of the AI tools, but we're starting to veer more in that direction, and we've actually started making a couple of our own metrics that are also accessible to those who are using the lab here. Is there a video? Nope, guess not. Okay. But what we'll find, or what I'm going to talk about today, are some of those tools that are born out of AI and this intersection between AI and physiology, and to talk about, okay, how are these tools being used and what's available out now? I'm going to talk about how can we evaluate physiology and AI, and this is going to be more for the students and also for the researchers who are going to be using this stuff. And then finally, for the educators in the audience, I want to talk a little bit about bringing this into the classroom. How can we take this technology and make it more accessible in order to further industry and further research? So out of the kind of toolbox that we have, we've actually started using and developing our own AI tools in a couple of different domains. These are eye tracking. So this is actually using a webcam to detect where your gaze is, and we're using AI methods for that. We have facial expression analysis, which also uses a webcam, and going back to Dr. Garcia's talk about emotion AI is also a part of that. We have voice metrics also, and then our latest one is actually webcam-based respiration. So a lot of these use computer vision AI methods to determine this, and I call them unsexy. They're sexy in their own right, but when people think a lot about AI, they immediately think like generative AI or like ChatGPT or DeepSeek or kind of these like really attractive models that are kind of all in the news nowadays, these are not so glamorous, but they are still using AI. And one of the things that I want to get across to you guys today is that when it comes to the world of AI and going back to Dr. Forr's talk about sort of different perspectives and the caveats and the benefits of AI, is that there's many different flavors of AI out there, and all of them can be leveraged in different ways. So let's go through each of these tools sequentially, just to get an understanding, but also to understand that these are tools available to you currently in the lab. So facial expression analysis is one that's been around for a while. This basically uses a webcam to detect the face, and using computer vision and deep learning and neural networks, quantifies what facial expressions are being made at a given time. We work with a company called Affectiva, which actually bases their AI off of the facial action coding system. And for those who are unaware, the FACS system is kind of the gold standard in the psychology literature for how we qualify facial expressions. This is based off of Paul Ekman's early work. So we have this algorithm available that can give you sort of at any point in a video what expression someone is making at any given time. The next is voice metrics. So we work with a company called Audeering. It's also known in the literature as OpenSmile. By the way, those QR codes all go to validation papers, et cetera, if you guys need citations or want to dig a little bit deeper into each of those. But what Audeering does, and many other voice metric AIs on the market today, is they're able to analyze the quality of the voice and not necessarily look at the words being said, but how you are saying it. At its most fundamental level, voice metrics can give you prosodic measures, which are sort of these fundamental measures of things like pitch, so how the frequency of the voice goes up and down, loudness, so as I get louder versus softer, speaking rate, or the number of syllables per second, and intonation, which is the variation in that pitch. As an extension of those prosodic measures, Audeering and these other companies can also take these and combine these prosodic measures into more dimensional models of emotion carried through the voice, and also emotional models as well. So to talk about those dimensions of arousal, valence, and dominance or control, those are also reflected in the voice and can also have their own constructs. So we're able to take someone speaking and quantify how much control does this person have in their voice? What is their valence? Do they sound happy or sad? Do they sound excited or do they sound calm? And then we can combine that with other measures like facial expressions. The third is webcam-based eye tracking. And for those who have already been in the lab or did the tour earlier today, you might have seen a little kind of chocolate bar type device stuck to the bottom of one of the monitors. So that's an eye tracker. And it's a specialized piece of hardware that when you're sitting in front of it, detects where your gaze is in space. Now, in response to the pandemic, well, what happened during the pandemic was that you couldn't bring people physically into a lab, let alone put any devices on them. So that led us to start developing a remote version of eye tracking that, again, uses computer vision to detect where the eyes are in your camera and where you're looking on the screen. So instead of using that little high-tech chocolate bar that you guys have in the lab, you're actually using the webcam, someone's webcam, to look at where they're looking on the screen. And the benefit of this is that you can now have eye tracking studies done remotely. You can actually create a study, send a URL to someone, they can click on the URL, use their own camera at home or from the privacy of wherever it is they are, and you can capture their eye tracking while they're at home and still collect data this way. So iMotion's developed their own version of webcam eye tracking. We're currently on our third iteration of it, and we also use hidden Markov models, so hey. But hidden Markov models are a form of generative AI that in this case is helping to remove some of the noise from the signal. So it's actually improving the accuracy of the webcam eye tracking. Because you're using a webcam and the data is a lot noisier, using hidden Markov models in this way actually goes a long way in improving the signal processing. So what this image shows here, this is actually the result of our last accuracy test. So on top are the results of the webcam eye tracking, looking at 9 calibration points on the screen. And on the bottom, we have our gold standard, which is a Tobii Spectrum. So this is like a hardware eye tracker with a very high accuracy. As you can see, I mean, for a webcam, it actually works pretty well. And compared to others that you see on the market, our algorithm has come a really long way with this, and we're starting to see inroads in not just in research, because now researchers have the opportunity to create studies and send them out remotely. They're no longer restricted to bringing college students into their lab to collect data, but you can collect a lot of data from a wide geographical range very quickly. So we're seeing a lot of this being used in academia, but also in industry. We've seen agencies start to use this and have pivoted to be doing entirely remote studies instead of having to physically bring people into a lab space, which is really exciting. And then the last one I'll talk about is respiration. So when it comes to these remote tools, these webcam-based tools like facial expressions, voice, and eye tracking, we cover the attention aspect and we cover the valence aspect of these emotional dimensions. But arousal was always just slightly out of reach. And there's multiple ways in which we can look at arousal, but it's very difficult to address this in a remote fashion. So what we started playing around with is the idea of respiration, but captured through the webcam. And we developed our own algorithm in-house, again using computer vision. But what it does is it takes the webcam feed of someone as they're consuming media or watching a video, and it looks at the minute changes in how the torso moves in the camera. And by looking at that movement, we're able to correlate that and plot that over time and derive a respiration pattern out of it. So the raw respiration data is the top graph on this image. We're able to process and smooth that, and then eventually take that breathing rate and convert it to a breaths per minute metric. So now we have kind of an opportunity to start to scratch at that problem of looking at arousal or salience through remote methods, in addition to the other tools that we have. The most recent validation that we actually came out with our respiration module, so we had two studies that we wanted to do. The first was, since webcam respiration is still pretty new on the scene, we wanted to validate it relative to a gold standard, in this case, using an actual respiration belt like you would in the lab by BioPack. So that was our first aim. The second aim was to show people content of various kinds, different valences and different levels of arousal, and to see, okay, does the respiration rate change if we show people various ads? So on the left, we have the result of the validation study compared to a respiration belt. What I want to highlight are these two circles here. So these circles, these big circles, indicate high correlation. So what we're looking at is a high correlation between the average respiration rate and the cycle count for both the webcam respiration and respiration done with a belt. So what this essentially says is webcam is that respiration data collected through the webcam with our own AI algorithm is comparable in the kind of data that we can get if you were using a gold standard belt in a lab. That's really important. We want to make sure it's valid first before we start throwing it in different kinds of interesting use cases. The second study is shown here. So I don't know if you can read the text up here, but we showed people a series of ads of varying valence and arousal. So we had some neutral images, a neutral baseline. We had a funny ad. We had some disgusting images. And we looked at the respiration rate of people as they were consuming that media. And what this image shows is that the respiration rate does change depending on what ads people were watching. It tended to increase more with funny advertisements and decrease with disgusting ones. And interestingly enough, we saw differences on both kind of the arousal metric, but also the valence metric. So there's some sort of an interaction going on, which is exciting, but also frustrating. I kind of wish it would pick one and stick with it. But one of the things we'd really like to do is that now that respiration is accessible as a tool, to look at this in neuromarketing practice and see, okay, where can we get some really interesting insights out of this? How does it fit in with the rest of our toolbox? So out of all of these biosensor modalities, I've talked about 4, right, that are being used through AI algorithms, either created by our partners or created by us. The really nice thing is that each of these sensors covers different kinds of constructs. And one of the trends I'm really starting to see when it comes to biosensors, like previously when we talked about biosensors, it was always on a modality basis. So you have eye tracking, and you have facial expressions, and you have GSR, and each tool does X. I'm starting to see an evolution in how we're thinking about sensor research, and that we're beginning to look more at constructs. So things like attention, arousal, or emotional expression or cognitive states like workload. Dr. Zach talked about one with immersion, for example. And all of these can be calculated by using different modalities in combination. So if you look at arousal, for example, skin conductance is really good at measuring arousal, but so is heart rate, and so is respiration. You can look at all of these together and have them validate each other, or you might use one instead of the other, kind of depending on your scenario. But now we're starting to look beyond the tool into what these tools mean and what these constructs are and how they can be used in research. So these AI tools are really just the beginning, and actually, I'm wrong. It's so much farther than what I'm saying here, because I'm saying that the next evolution of this, of using physiology and AI tools together, is to start to create predictive models of these constructs. So things like engagement or purchase intent, right? But the thing is, we're already starting to see it. So, Paul Zach talked about his model of immersion, which he's using in research and involves, AI-powered models of consumer engagement. We're talking about all of the other kind of models that are being talked about today, like those are already being used. Like Ipsos is already starting to develop their own models of emotion AI, as we saw from Dr. Garcia's talk. So this is really something that is at the forefront of the field and something that you all, being at MTSU, have the opportunity to capitalize on and really get in on the ground floor of this. So I want to talk really quickly about evaluation. Because one of these things that happens, and we know a little bit from Dr. Forst's talk about attitudes towards AI, is that there's also a heavy level of skepticism. And every couple of years, we get an article like this that talks about emotion AI and the dangers they're in and how they're being used for nefarious ends. We have some practitioners that go, okay, I really don't like this one thing, I don't trust it, I'm going to go with this other thing. So one of the things we have to always keep on top of is how people are interpreting AI in the space and whether those accusations are truly founded or not. So this is more for the students who are going to start using these tools a lot more in their careers. It becomes really important to understand, how do you evaluate an AI when you see it? How can you really know if the promises that it's making are truly accurate? And can you rely on it for these things? What are the assumptions or the caveats behind it? So there's a couple questions that you can ask. One, what are an AI's metrics based on? And what are the caveats of those definitions? We'll go through each of these. Second, how is an AI trained? What is its ground truth? You'll learn the term ground truth, and you'll hear that a lot. Third, do the assumptions about a particular AI match with the answers to 1 and 2? 3 easy questions. So let's try this with facial expression analysis as an example. So, question 1, what are an AI's metrics based on? If we look at Affectiva, for example, which we work with really heavily, we look at the original system, the FACS system. So Paul Ekman's work in the psychology literature. And okay, well, how are people treating FACS? Well, FACS still has its fair share of criticism, but it still has a really strong publication record. And this is a paper by Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's a pretty outspoken critic of facial expression analysis in the field as a whole. But she has this really interesting quote that facial expression technology detects facial movements and not emotional expressions. And so-called emotional expressions are more variable and context-dependent than originally assumed. And most of the published research was not designed to probe this variation and characterize this context dependence. So FACS has this share of criticism, right? But people still use it. And that's because researchers, by their very nature, they acknowledge the assumptions and the limitations of the tool in whatever research they do. So if someone uses the FACS system in their research, they have to understand that it's not the end-all be-all for measuring emotional expressions. They have to understand that it has a limit. So the FACS system is context-dependent. That must mean any AI that is based off of the FACS system must also be context-dependent. And just because an AI is based off of a particular system doesn't mean the AI is better than it. You have to match the context in this case. Question 2, what is an AI's ground truth? So by this, I always liken, when it comes to supervised learning, I always liken it to showing a toddler pictures of animals, because you want to teach them they're animals, right? So you show them a picture of a rhino, you show them a picture of a giraffe, you say this is what a giraffe is. You want to show them good pictures. You don't want to show them Picasso's rendition of a giraffe, otherwise they're going to have a really messed up view as to what a giraffe looks like. It's the same with AI. So what is its ground truth? What is it being trained on? Here are 2 sample algorithms. Both are facial expression algorithms, and both are very different in their ground truth. Algorithm 1, has a bunch of face videos, and they are evaluated by facts-trained human coders that say, according to the facts system, this is a good example of a smile, and this is a good example of a brow furrow, and we're going to use these to train our algorithm, and anything else that's ambiguous, we're not going to use it. Algorithm number 2 uses something very different. They use crowdsourcing. So they have a bunch of face videos, they go to a whole bunch of people and say, does this person look happy to you, yes or no? Both are valid algorithms. They're both facial expression algorithms, but they both have vastly different ground truths. And as a result, they are going to be successful in some contexts more than others. And so then you have to think, does the use match the ground truth? Like, one might be a little bit more palatable to academic audiences because it's based off of an academic gold standard and is evaluated according to academic standards. Algorithm 2 might be more beneficial for industry purposes that care more about kind of that crowdsourcing popular vote kind of approach, right? Both are valid, both are very different, and you have to know to look for that difference and understand it. The third, what assumptions are being made as a result of these questions? A lot of the pushback that we get on facial expressions, especially by people like the European Commission, for example, and a lot of those articles I mentioned earlier, they'll look at things and they'll take something like an AI and say, well, it must be able to do these nefarious things. So these technologies are, quote, possible ways to make pretty important decisions, to identify whether people might be fraudsters, to whether job applicants are worthy of getting that role, and there doesn't seem to be any sense that these work. I know this is a professional scientific symposia, but I always like to pepper it with a little bit of memes. Nobody ever really said it was good for that. If you want to make, or like I see other people that say, okay, I want to use facial expressions to look at empathy. I'm like, do you know what empathy looks like? Because if you don't, I mean, good luck training a computer to look, you know, and to figure that out. If you want to have an AI that detects lying, you have to feed it ground truth data of people lying and meaning to lie. So you have to see if the ground truth matches the assumptions and the conclusions that you're making about a particular AI. So emotional AI simply is not treated with the same nuance as its foundations, resulting in a very black and white judgment. The way that researchers treat the fact system is not given, like, we don't give that same level of grace to an emotion AI. And the problem isn't necessarily facial coding or any other sort of AI, it's simply misguided expectations of the technology and people thinking that because it's shiny tech that uses lots of numbers and fancy math, that it can do things beyond what we can do. And at this stage, it's simply not true. Can it be done? Most likely. Can all AI do it? Absolutely not. So again, we have to think about this. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is, we're out of time. You can use this in the classroom. People have been super successful with it. You guys have this available in the MTSU lab. So if you're interested in using this in your classroom or for your studies, talk to Gaia, and she'll tell you a lot more with more time. Boom. So with that, I've talked about where physiology and AI, where this intersection is happening, what tools are available to you, how you can evaluate or what questions you can ask. And at the end of the day, you know, the use of AI makes human behavior research more accessible. By using webcams and this remote collection, it is more accessible to researchers, practitioners, and students. But as mentioned before in a previous talk, like, you still have to have a human-centric view to fully leverage the technology, to fully understand it, and to use it to its maximal function. Thank you very much. Maybe. So I think we can definitely help with that. Like, we can definitely provide the tools for that. At the end of the day, you need a lot of data to create these kind of AI data sets, right? So if a researcher does want to create an AI about something and then use biometric data to feed into that model, we can definitely help with that. And we have a lot of our clients that are already doing that. We're good? Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Good afternoon. I'm Rachel McGinnis. I'm the director of the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs here at MTSU. I am proud to support this event and highlight the importance of research-driven innovation in the hospitality industry. Our office is dedicated to fostering collaborations that advance knowledge and create real-world impact, and today's discussion is a perfect example of that mission in action. We're honored to have Dr. Spiros Admiotis, an associate professor at the International Hellenic University Department of Organizational Management, Marketing, and Tourism. He specializes in knowledge management, organizational behavior, and entrepreneurship, teaching at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. He also serves as the Deputy Director of the Tourism Management and Services Laboratory. He has been the Vice President of the Epsilon Net Groups since 2016, where he plays a key role in bridging academic research and business innovation. His contributions to strategic tourism planning and innovation strategies have shaped tourism policies in Thessaloniki, Chalkidiki, and Cyprus. The International Hellenic University is one of our valued international research partners, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to showcase this collaboration. This research has the potential to advance both employee well-being and performance in the hospitality sector. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Spiros Admiotis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind presentation. And God, I'm so proud to be here. And I will be over in a few minutes, don't worry. And I know you are tired, exhausted, but I have something to tell you. First of all, I would like to comment about the artificial intelligence debate that we're having. And I wrote down, as I was hearing all those interesting information that you gave us, the speakers gave to us, that the human race is like Star Wars. There are many episodes, and very exciting episodes. The first one, people striving to survive. The second episode, people using tools. People talking, people writing, people using machines, people using computers, and now the last episode, for the time being, is people using artificial intelligence. So we are entering a new era. I'm so very excited about that. And before starting my presentation, here it is. A few years ago, not that many years ago, 25 years ago, I was at your spot in Greece, in Thessaloniki. And I was studying business then. And when I graduated, I thought to myself, I said, what I'm going to do now? How I'm going to earn my money and live with my future wife. And I took some courses. I became a Microsoft system engineer, authorized system engineer. So I developed my own company, and I was giving pieces of advice to people who were running hotels, mostly. After a period of 2 or 3 years, I had my master's degree, and then I started my PhD, and I came across with Yannis, not Yannis, another Yannis, Michos. He was the founder of Epsilonet, a group of companies. He started his company with 2 or 3 people, and they were making some kind of software for accountants. And he told me, Spiros, come over here. Let's start making a PMS. A PMS is a hotel reservation system, hotel property management system, and so on and so forth. And we started developing this new thing, and the one thing led to another, and the other led to another thing, and now the company, the group of companies, has more than 2,000 employees in Greece, is the biggest IT company in Greece. So I have the honor to be the vice president of the board of directors there. It's a great honor for me to be there, and I'm learning a lot. So Why I'm saying this? Because it's very difficult to manage people. And what I'm going to talk about is emotions of people. So let me start with thanking MTSU for being here, for letting me be here to this wonderful event. And I'm coming from the International Hellenic University. I age you, I hold you, I have you. And we're going to talk about emotions. I have my notes here, but I don't need them. Anyhow, I'll go through the presentation very briefly. That's the structure, very nice structure. I won't follow it. And few things about my university. It's in Greece. Do you know where Greece is? I hope that you are. Okay. It's almost the same extent as Tennessee. 131 square kilometers, but there are 15,000 kilometers of coastline where you can spend your time there. Well, my university is that. It's a merge of a university and three technical universities. It was established in 2018. We have a lot of schools and a lot of postgraduate and graduate programs. This is my university, this is a degree, this is a handshake. And my department was assessed, evaluated, and got 12 out of 12 A's, the highest rank in Greece. And we're very proud of that, and the team is very proud of that achievement. And this is pictures of our students who are graduating school. So that's for that. Other pictures, that's our dean, the smiling one. And let's go to the paper. I would like to ask you what effective management is. Do you know what effective management is? Can you tell me, please? Yes, please.
Taking care of the people you manage and getting the job done.
That's right. I could agree with that. The first one is taking care of people. Okay. Even if you have the best idea in the world, to realize it, you want the working power behind it. So you have to take care of your people. I would say effective management is to make the best out of your employees. Take all that you can from your employees, but under one at least condition. Let them be satisfied. What is satisfaction? Satisfaction, it's many things, but above all, it's emotion. Performance. So motivation is to make people work intensively and hard towards the right goal. In this definition, the emotions do not exist. So we are trying to do that. We're trying to make the best out of the employees in order to gain things. So we're transcending in a new era, and I'm very excited about that. So in this framework, and I will start the heart of my presentation, is that we wanted to measure emotions. How do we measure emotions? That was a very difficult task to do. John Ioannis Konstantinidis, who is my PhD, post-PhD researcher, he earned his PhD a few days ago, helped me to understand and measure emotions. So we conducted an experiment in a hotel in Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is the second largest city in Greece, in the northern part of the country. And we started the experiment on 20 people. And we just used the EEG equipment, only EEG equipment, because the data were vast if we used anything else. So regarding the ethics, first of all, we talked to the company who agreed, and then we take the permission of the university, the Committee of Deontology of the International Hellenic University. Difficult task. So, materials and methods. This is John conducting the experiment. 20 employees, all healthy, blah, 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 blah. The procedure. The employee entered the room. What's happening here? I was explaining the role. So they sat somewhere comfortably, and John was putting on the EEG on their heads. This is the device, materials and methods. For 1.5 minutes, he was adjusting the EEG to their heads, and then they had to fulfill a questionnaire, which was based on PERMA questionnaire, validated PERMA questionnaire, with the sections of lifestyle, commitment, stress, enjoyment, burnout, and overall well-being. It was a very long questionnaire, and then we had another 1.5 minutes of rest. This is the procedure. This is the device, the Emotive Epoch X device. Why did we use this one? Because it is easy to use, because it has 14 sensors, it is validated, and it's very well spread in the market. So we used this machine, this device, and this is the topology of the sensors and the hertz, the frequencies that it measures. And there are 6 emotions measured. The first one was engagement, the state of being actively involved or absorbed in the activity. Excitement, I'm very excited. Attention or focus, relaxation, and stress. These are the 6 emotions that we've measured. The analysis. We have a strategy of analysis in 2 ways. The first one was descriptive analysis of the questionnaire. 20 questionnaires were used, and the Cronbach alpha was very satisfactory, and it showed that all of the employees were very well committed, declared that they were committed to the job. They had not very much stress. They were satisfied with their job. There was no sense of burnout, and they were well-being in very high element. So these are the descriptives of the questionnaire. The fun part starts from now on. This is my daughter, and we're talking about the art of complementarity. So what we did is not try to make clear that questionnaires are not sufficient. We're trying to make a point saying that we have to combine Likert scale questionnaires with EEG devices and experiments like that. So we have used 3 basic softwares. The first one was SPSS, very famous. The second one was JASP, free. And the third one was eViews, to compare the time series that were produced. So what did you do? What did we do? We took the frequencies, and in every 5 seconds, we took the average price, the average value of every 5 seconds during the experiment, which was 23 minutes in total. So we took the values, and first of all, we did the descriptive figure here, and we saw the evolution of each emotion. And then we took the values, and we conduct a network analysis. Why did we conduct a network analysis? Because we wanted to see all the emotions, how strongly or not they are connected, how they depend on each other. And last but not least, we implement a time series analysis using e-views to see the autocorrelation of emotions and the correlation with each other. That leads us to many inferences. So this is how it works. Just one simple paradigm is this. And we also test the centralities in the network analysis to see the influence, the strength, and the speed that the emotions are communicating to each other. What we have found, we are still processing data, but we have found that the 20 employees of the hotel, the central emotions are excitement and interest. These are the emotions that work very well in their mind. Let me make clear that there is a file for each employee, but we cannot personalize the file with the employee data. So we just use the overall findings. So it's very crucial for them to be excited. It's very crucial for them to be interested in what we are doing. The secondary emotions are relaxation, the ability to get calm after the intense work, and stress also. In the previous research, we found out that stress needs to be somewhere in the middle. No stress brings nothing valuable to the company, and high stress also. So the productive stress is somewhere between the values of 1 to 100. So engagement was identified as an isolated emotion, meaning that they all work because they need the money to do so. Anyhow, we found the topology of emotions: central emotions, secondary emotions, and isolated emotions. So let's talk about stress. How do we manage people? The authoritarian style of leadership leads to more stress because it's based on fear. So if we decide to be authoritarian in our company, then we create stress. And since the time series analysis shows that stress is autocorrelated, stress brings more stress. Also, in our research, interest and excitement were also correlated to themselves and to each other. So, if I'm excited for something, yes, I am excited, and excitement brings excitement. And I'm very excited, and I remain excited. And interesting as well. I'm very interested in what I'm doing, so I will continue doing that. For those who can understand me, all of you, these are types of leadership and management. In the same research, there were the secondary emotions also had a very strong relationships to each other. And I will omit this one. It's time-consuming. Don't do that. I would suggest some things to the management of the hotel. The first one is to focus on the central emotions. Please include challenging projects. Make the worker, the employee, more efficient. Enhance relaxation and stress management. Build teams. Let them depend on each other. Stress management. Do not press the employees too much. Let them know what stress is about. Strengthen engagement. Create supportive work environment and encourage employee engagement. This could give you a very strong feedback of what we are doing. And leverage excitement as well. Let them be excited. Give them the vision of the company that they want to make. Build strong connections, build team between the personnel, and let them continue the improvement of the company. So what I'm trying to say is that we did a research, okay. We found out the topology of emotions in 20 persons in a hotel, okay. What we have gained from this research is that we are seeing employees in another level of understanding. Now we know their emotions. We know how they feel. We know how their primary and their secondary emotions, and we can build our management upon them. So I think this is the basis of things. I think that research is in a starting point, and we believe that we will continue this communication with MTSU in the following years. Thank you so much. That was not too long.
So, we're at the end, so thanks for everybody for the patience. So this is the moment I want to thank you. Thank you everybody here who remain and the people online for joining us today in this symposium. Thanks to the speakers and the guests who traveled all around the world to be here. And thanks to all the people that helped in the organization. So Sherry, Dr. Blair, Lara, Darby, so you've been amazing. Really, you've been amazing to help us do this. Thanks to Dr. Sukoya that remained. There you are, Lara. There you are. I was saying, where is she? And also thank you to all the students. Not only the students who participated to this event as students, but also thanks to the all amazing students that work for weeks in order to make everything happen. So my team that worked as a research assistant, coordinator, teaching assistant at the lunch, and they spoke to the speaker and so forth. So I really, really, really want to thank you. And my last thank you is to Urban, because really made this happen. 3 years ago when I came here with a dream, and it really helped me to make this dream coming true. So I want to thank you for all the support that you gave to me. So have a wonderful night and rest if you can. We are not resting, we're going to dinner.